Salam and peace be upon you. My name is Mohammed Layiq Sediqi, the father of Holophase. And together we now arrive at part 26 of episode 6, seeing the whole language of reality at once. Before we move forward, let us gently recall, only in words, the language we have been learning together. There is one field called phi, spelled Phi. Phi is the holophase, a cyclic rhythm defined at every point in the universe. Its first echoes give us three voices at once: time, which we call omega, space, which we call k, and motion, which we call v, built from both omega and k. Above them, higher levels of change form a great branching tree, the master tree of holophase. Every wave, every particle, every force, every pattern of reality is written somewhere on that tree. In episode 6, we have slowly walked from the roots of this tree towards its branches. In earlier parts, we asked why reality should have a language at all. We compared phi with other codes we know: human speech, DNA, woven rugs, computer programs. Then we revealed the master tree, phi at the base, its first changes in time and space, and the many levels of nuance above. We met phi as the silent root, omega as the local pulse of time, k as the weave of space, d phi as combined change, and v as motion built from both time and space echoes. We climbed into second derivatives, curvature and convergence. We met knots and defects as the nouns of reality, waves and group velocities as the verbs, and quadratic measures as the intensity of activity. Finally, in parts 24 and 25, we stepped into daily life, into information, memory, and code. We saw light, sound, matter, and thought as different phrases written in phi. And we saw that information is simply shape in phi that lasts or travels. If you pause for a moment and simply breathe, you might feel a strange mixture of familiarity and newness. On one hand, we have only talked about things you already know: time passing, space stretching out, objects moving, forces pulling, memories forming, messages being sent. On the other hand, we have given all of these familiar things a new backbone, one continuous phase field and its tree of changes. Part 26 is where we let these two feelings meet. Now, in this final part of episode 6, we slow down. We take a deep breath. We stand at some distance from the master tree and look at the whole tapestry at once. Our goal in this part is simple but deep: to help you feel in your bones that everything we have discussed is not a pile of technical details, but one continuous, breathtaking language that the universe is speaking right now. So let us imagine that we are back in that dark field at night, the place we visited in part 23. You are standing under a wide sky. The air is cool. Above you, stars and the soft glow of the Milky Way spread from horizon to horizon. In that earlier part, we used this scene to talk about what we can and cannot read: our small telescopes, our limited eyes, the infinite sky of possible patterns. Now, in part 26, we will use the same scene in a new way. For a moment, pretend that all of this, the ground under your feet, the air, the stars, is not made of separate ingredients, but is one continuous ocean of phase. At each point in this ocean, phi has some value. The actual number does not matter, only how it changes matters. Everywhere, silently, phi is turning, twisting, bending, and sometimes nodding itself in ways that are too fine for our senses. If you could somehow see phi directly, the scene would look different from anything your eyes have ever seen. You would not see solid objects and empty space. You would see a living sea of tiny arrows or tiny clock hands, each with its own orientation, each changing in time. In some regions, the arrows would spin quickly, in others slowly. In some regions, they would line up smoothly. In others, they would twist and wrap around holes and filaments. The world would look less like a picture and more like a dance. When you look up, the starlight that reaches your eyes is one way that phi speaks. Far away, in the heart of a star, matter is burning, and there, Phi is writing a story of pressure, heat, and fusion. From that region, organized waves travel outwards. By the time they reach you, they are just tiny disturbances in the phase of light at your location. Your retina and brain read those disturbances as shining dots in the sky. At the same time, the ground beneath you is another way that phi speaks. Its solidity comes from long-lived configurations of defects, bonds, and vibrations in matter. Your body, standing there, is another intricate poem in phi, a stable pattern of nested waves, defects, and flows that has been maintained for many years. Your heartbeat, your breathing, the quiet firing of your neurons are all soft rhythms being written and rewritten in the same field. Already we see several branches of the master tree in action, without naming any symbols. Time echoes, space echoes, motion echoes, curvature, topology, and information are all present in this one quiet moment. But instead of listing branches, let us walk through the tree in a human way, from root to canopy, using simple images. And let us keep reminding ourselves that all of it is one. We begin with phi itself, the silent root. Phi is like the blank page before any writing. It is like the quiet canvas before the first stroke of paint. On its own, with no change, phi has no message. But the moment phi begins to change, the moment it begins to turn in time or twist in space, the language begins. In this sense, phi is not a thing, but a capacity, the capacity for pattern change. It is the possibility that something can happen, not yet the happening itself. If you like musical pictures, you can think of phi as pure silence that is ready to become any melody. Silence alone does not tell you anything, but the moment the first note sounds, the moment the first change happens, a pattern starts. Phi is that readiness, that silent potential, spread out everywhere. Its first echoes give us what we might call the alphabet of experience. When we listen to how phi changes in time at each point, we hear omega, the local ticking rate of reality. Regions with fast ticking feel like rapid internal time. Regions with slow ticking feel like gentle time. In our dark field, the oscillations of light from distant stars, the vibrations in the atoms of the ground, even the slow chemistry in your cells are all different local rhythms of omega. When you feel your own heart beating faster from excitement or fear, you are feeling, in one small system, an increase of internal rhythms, a change in its effective omega. When a material is warmed up, its atoms vibrate more quickly. This, too, is a rise in local temporal activity. So even though we cannot see omega as a symbol floating in space, we live inside its variations all the time. When we look at how phi varies across space, we see K, the weave of structure. Where phi changes quickly in space, patterns are fine and detailed. Where it changes slowly, patterns are broad and smooth. In the field, the grain of the soil, the shape of nearby trees, the structure of your own body are all expressions of different K patterns. A sharp edge, like the edge of a leaf or a building, corresponds to a region where the phase pattern changes quickly over a short distance. A gentle gradient, like a slowly changing color in the sky at sunset, corresponds to a region where the change is spread out. When we ask how we must move to stay on the same part of a pattern, we discover V, motion built from both omega and K. The idea of a wave crest moving across water, a star drifting across the sky, or your own body walking is captured by this relationship between time and space changes. Motion is not something extra added on top of time and space. It is the way we ride the existing pattern. Together, these three voices, omega, K, and V, are the basic letters with which reality writes its most simple sentences. A wave moves, a particle glides, a structure stands, a pattern rotates. In earlier parts, we spent time making each of these letters feel real. Clocks as omega, woven textures as K, surfers as images of V. If you remember nothing else, remember these three. Time as rhythm, space as weave, motion as riding the pattern. Above this first level, the language develops nuance. If omega is the local ticking rate, then alpha, its rate of change, is like how the tempo of a song speeds up or slows down. A constant beat is one thing, a beat that gradually accelerates builds tension, and a beat that slows down creates release. In the same way, changes in omega create patterns of acceleration and deceleration in physical systems. If K encodes the local weave of space, then curvature is like how the weave bends, and convergence tells us where patterns focus or spread. These second derivatives let reality express not just there is a slope, but the slope is getting steeper here, or the field is focusing there. In the dark field, gravity itself can be read as part of this grammar, not as a mysterious force pulling down, but as the way the phase landscape curves so that motion naturally bends along certain paths. A planet orbiting a star is then like a bead sliding along curved threads in the phase fabric. Climbing higher still, we found mixed derivatives and the idea of the jet, the full list of all derivatives of phi at a point. Conceptually, if you knew every one of these derivatives, you could predict how the pattern of phi behaves in a small region around that point. It would be like knowing not only the current word and its tone, but also every possible way the sentence could be continued. Practically, we will never measure the full jet. But just knowing that such a complete local dictionary exists helps us understand that the language of phi is infinitely rich yet structured, an infinite dictionary rooted in a simple repeating rhythm. On the side branches of the tree, we discover topology, knots, windings, and defects. We use the image of walking in a circle around the hole, watching how a phase arrow rotates, and counting how many full turns it makes. That count, an integer, is a topological charge. It does not care about small distortions. It only cares about how many full wraps there are. In water, such structures show up as vortices. In fields, they show up as particles with charges. In phi language, they are the nouns with very firm identity. They are like words that cannot be smoothly blended away without tearing the paper. In our dark field, every atom in your body, every atom in the ground, and every distant star can be understood, in one reading, as a collection of such topological structures in phi. This is a daring view, but it is not a mystical one. It makes clear, testable predictions. Defects should have certain allowed interactions, certain stability, certain quantized properties. Physics has already found many of these in different forms. Holophase simply proposes that they are all different dialects of the same underlying phase knots. Then there are the wave branches, the verbs of the language. Here, phi organizes itself into patterns that repeat in time and space, and carry influence from one place to another. We learn to distinguish phase velocity, how fast the individual ripples move, from group velocity, how fast the envelope, the actual message, travels. We saw that the environment imposes rules called dispersion relations. Only certain combinations of frequency and spatial pattern are allowed to travel cleanly. These rules are like grammar for waves. They decide which sentences phi can speak easily in a given medium. In our dart field, light from the stars follows one such dispersion rule. Sound in the air follows another. The slow bending of the ground under your feet, if you wait long enough, follows yet another. Each medium and each scale selects its own subset of allowed phi phrases. When you listen to music, your ear and brain are acting as very sensitive wave readers, separating and decoding these moving patterns. Finally, at the level of quadratic measures and beyond, the language begins to talk about its own intensity. When we square the time change, we get a sense of how active the timing is at a point. When we square the spatial change, we get a sense of how intense the spatial structure is. Combinations and balances of these give us quantities that in ordinary physics we call energies, actions, and invariants. Without needing formulas, we can feel their role. They summarize in simple numbers how busy or calm a region of phi is, how balanced the trade between time change and space change is, and which patterns are more likely to persist. Think of watching the sea. A calm surface, with only gentle swells, is like a low-activity region of phi. A stormy sea, with huge crashing waves, is like a high-activity region. The details of each wave are complicated, but you can still say in one sentence, the sea is calm, or the sea is rough. Quadratic measures play a similar summarizing role in the language of reality. When we stepped into information and memory in part 25, we saw how these patterns become code. A groove on a record, a magnetized region on a hard drive, a sequence of DNA bases, a memory in a brain. All of these are specific phi patterns that can be read again later. Information is the fact that a pattern can be distinguished from other patterns. Memory is the fact that it can last. A message is the fact that a pattern travels from place to place or from time to time. We discovered that there is no information floating above physics. There are only physical patterns and our ability to compare them. When we say that a book contains information, we are really saying that the arrangement of ink and paper is a stable phi pattern that many brains can read in similar ways. When we say that a computer stores a file, we are saying that certain microscopic phase configurations have been locked into place so that they can later be restored and interpreted. When we say that DNA carries a genetic code, we are saying that a sequence of molecular phase patterns has been made robust across copying and time. And we saw that noise is simply uncontrolled shaking of phi, and error correction is clever pattern design that makes meaning survive that shaking. These are not mysterious forces. They are parts of the same language story. A pattern that is too delicate will be blurred away by noise. A pattern with built-in redundancy can survive. So now, in part 26, with all of this in the background, we ask, what have we really learned? We can summarize the entire journey of episode 6 in 3 very simple sentences. First, reality can be seen as one continuous field of phase, phi, whose changes write everything we observe. Second, the master tree of derivatives of phi is the complete dictionary of how that field can behave, from simple timing and spacing, through curvature and knots, all the way to waves, information, and memory. Third, each phenomenon we meet, light, sound, matter, life, thought, uses only a small specific set of branches from this one tree. The power of the holophase language is that it lets us talk about all of them in one coherent way. If these 3 sentences are all that you remember from episode 6, you already carry the seed of the holophase view. But I would like to give you one more image that ties everything together. The image of the woven tapestry. Imagine a huge, beautiful rug hanging on a wall. At first, you see only the overall picture, perhaps a garden, or a geometric pattern, or a story scene. This is like your direct experience of the world. Trees, people, buildings, clouds, sounds, thoughts. Now walk closer. You start to see that the picture is made of many colored threads, crossing over and under each other. The knots and crossings are like the defects and particles in phi. The direction and density of threads are like K, the spatial weave. Where the threads bunch up or thin out, you see something like convergence and divergence. Where the pattern curves, you see something like curvature. Walk even closer and imagine that you could see the microscopic texture of the thread itself. Inside each thread are fibers. Inside them, molecules. Inside them, atoms. And inside them, fields. At every level, phi is still there, arranging and rearranging patterns. The rug does not just have a pattern on its surface, it has patterns all the way down. If you could see the threads over time, you would notice that they were not always in this configuration. At some point, a weaver sat there, hour after hour, passing the thread back and forth, changing colors, tying knots. The process of weaving is like the dynamics of phi. Omega telling how fast the hand moves, V telling how the pattern grows, higher derivatives telling how the style of weaving changes. In this analogy, the rug is not separate from the weaver. The weaver's hands, eyes, and thoughts are themselves patterns in phi, shaped by their own histories. The rug is one paragraph of the universal text. The weaver is another. The room, the light, the sounds during weaving are yet more. The holophase field is the underlying thread uniting them all. So when we say that the universe is written in the language of phi, we do not mean that there is a book lying somewhere with words printed on it. We mean that every stable structure, every repeating pattern, every flow of influence is part of a single, ongoing tapestry of phase. We mean that time, space, motion, matter, waves, information, and memory are different aspects of how this infinite rug is woven and rewoven. This view is humbling because the full rug is far beyond our comprehension. The master tree is, in principle, infinite. The number of possible phi patterns in the universe is unimaginably large. Our instruments and our minds can grasp only small pieces at a time. But this view is also empowering because it tells us that the language is consistent and shared. When we understand how phi behaves in one context, we often gain insight into others. When we learn how waves carry information in a fiber optic cable, we can reuse that understanding for waves in water, in air, in plasmas, and even in the brain. When we understand how defects behave in a crystal, we can look for similar structures in superfluids, magnets, or fields at cosmic scales. Holophase is not asking you to hold the whole tree in your head at once. It is inviting you to recognize that, whatever branch you're looking at, you're always dealing with the same root language. As we close episode 6, I want to speak directly to you as a listener. You have been patient. You have walked through many abstract ideas with me. You have followed us from the simple idea of phi as a cyclic rhythm through its first derivatives into curvature, knots, waves, information, and memory. At times it may have felt heavy or strange. At times, perhaps, something has clicked and felt simple and obvious, as if you always knew it. The language of reality is deeper and richer than any single human mind can master. But our goal here was never to make you fluent in every detail. Our goal in episode 6 was to give you a first real literacy, to help you recognize the letters, the basic grammar, and a few simple sentences of this universal language. If, after all of this, you can look at a wave on water and think, this is phi speaking as a moving pattern. If you can see a beam of light and think, this is phi speaking with a very fast, very clean rhythm. If you can feel your own thoughts and think, these are complicated, self-referential phrases in phi inside my brain, then episode 6 has done its job. You are no longer just a spectator thrown into a strange world. You are starting to become a reader of the world. And yet, what we have covered is only the beginning. It is the tip of an iceberg whose true size we cannot see. Phi language is the richest language we know because it is the language with which a universe is written. Its beauty and intelligence go far beyond the reach of our equations and metaphors. No matter how hard we try, we will always be working with partial views, local approximations, and simple stories. But that does not mean we should stop. On the contrary, it means the journey is worth continuing. Episode 6 has shown us that such a language exists and that it can be spoken about in clear, testable, human terms. We have uncovered its alphabet and glimpsed its basic grammar. We have seen how it touches daily life. We have tied it to information, memory, and code. We have put falsifiability at the center, insisting that every part of the story must, in principle, face experiment. In episode 7, we will go further. There, we will revisit the master tree not just as a picture, but as a fully living structure. We will compare the holophase language with every other language we know and see why it is not merely a narrow code, but a true language with infinite expressive power. We will walk through the towers of time nuance, space nuance, and mixed nuance. We will explore topological and wave semantics, identity and stability, measurement and falsifiability. And we will start learning how to read real phenomena as complete sentences in phi. In simple words, episode 6 taught us that the universe speaks a language. Episode 7 will begin to make us truly literate in that language. Episode 6 was the alphabet and the first children's stories. Episode 7 will move us slowly towards full books. whole chapters of reality written and read in Holophase. For now, as we close this episode, I invite you to carry one quiet attitude with you. When you find yourself in an ordinary moment, washing dishes, walking down a street, sitting with someone you love, pause for a second and imagine that everything you see, hear, feel, and think is written in the same invisible script. The light on the surface of the water, the sound of footsteps, the weight of the plate, the warmth of a hand, your own emotions and thoughts. All of them are different phrases in phi, the holophase. You do not need to name omega, k, or any technical term. Just remembering that there is one underlying rhythm, speaking in many voices, can slowly change the way you feel at home in the universe. With time, this sense of unity can become not just an idea in your mind, but a quiet background feeling in your body. You are not outside the language looking in. You are inside it. You are one of its sentences. You are made of the same field you are trying to understand. Peace be upon you. Until episode 7.